now. And I just want to say, hello, alumni. Thank you for joining us. And I see that you found KGI Connected, our new networking platform. And we're so delighted to be able to offer you these exciting webinars just for you. Students are very excited to join them sometimes too, but that's one of the reasons we're recording it so that they can view them later. And on the reverse is also true. We've also started allowing alums to join into industry talks that happen on campus. So if Don ever comes to campus and gives a talk here, you'll be able to zoom in to that as well as much as we can. So it's great that we're able to provide all of this. And I know, if you all have ideas for other webinars, feel free. I just want to thank Don Jones, who I first met at I think it was a School of Pharmacy Shark Tank event, and he had some very interesting insights on digital equipment, which I think is the new future, or the present future. And he is, as I wrote in the invitation, he is a recognized leader. He's on several boards. Look at his bio on LinkedIn. It's amazing. He just came back from a whirlwind trip, it sounds like. And he really does know what he's talking about on the digital side of things. So I'm really looking forward to hearing his talk. And without further ado, I'd like to give the word to Don Jones. Thank you.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm going to switch to screen share so you can see a presentation. The presentation I'm going to use is one that I've just recently used with several pharma companies, so you'll kind of understand who maybe the audience is, but it would work for a general life science audience as well. And let me just hold that up, and oops, that's not going to work. I have to hit the screen share button first. Linda, are we sharing? Is it working?
It looks like we can see, can kind of see two screens, it looks like, but we can see it, so I think we're good.
Okay. So I wear two hats for everybody's benefit. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at the Scripps Translational Science Institute in La Jolla, which is led by Eric Topol. And I have a portfolio of companies, both Fortune 500 and venture-backed companies that I sit on either advisory boards for or the board of directors. And the common theme for all of it is digital health. But I thought just from the perspective, I've been working with Eric Topol and the Scripps Translational Science Institute for the last 10 years, indirectly through Qualcomm, and directly for the last 2.5 years, I keep an office there. And I just thought I'd share some of the work we do there. We have a master's degree program for digital health for physicians that are in training to become clinical researchers. We have a master's degree program for clinical research for physicians, but one specifically in wireless health. And then we run a clinical trials program that's exclusive to digital health. And we started that about 5 years ago when we realized that we needed to see more evidence being generated, and we jumped in, and I helped fund that through Qualcomm, where I was for 11 years. And so these are just some of the articles that have come out over the last few years on our digital health work. We don't do phase 3 trials. We try and focus on trials in general that are going to be transformational to the industry. We're also the proud recipients of the world's largest NIH grant in history. It's part of the Precision Medicine Initiative, a $207 million grant we just received. And that grant is part of the build-out process of the infrastructure for the Precision Medicine Initiative. It will presumably create a lot of models for how clinical trials may be conducted in the future. There'll be a lot of use of mobile apps, a lot of prompting of what needs to be done next through those mobile app communication tools that are available. And certainly a lot of new data, both health data, biome data, genome data, laboratory data, and the list goes on, and phenotype data from a variety of digital health devices that will be attached to 1 million folks that are volunteers to be in the digital cohort. So we got this partly because we're renowned experts in the field of digital health, and obviously it's a big deal for us and for the industry. This slide here just kind of outlines the sensors we keep track of. It's not meant to be complete, but it basically says if you're familiar with a sensor that's currently used in medicine and it measures something on the human body or in the human body, it probably is on its way or already here in the form of a wearable that might be worn on the body. It might be in the form of a patch, which would be a disposable, or in some other form factor that is meant to be very consumer-oriented, and in some cases much less expensive than the traditional medical device boxes that has traditionally been sold into medical practices and into hospitals. I have this slide here just to show the first real significant recorded session where a consumer health device was used to make a clinical therapy decision, in this case to cardiovert a patient. So this patient presented in arrhythmia, in an uncontrolled arrhythmia post an epileptic seizure, and the ER docs were trying to figure out whether they should cardioconvert based on how long he'd been in this pattern. So they noticed they had a heart rate monitor on his wrist. It happened to be one from Fitbit, and so they took a look at the data on it and decided that he had not been in arrhythmia for that long, and so it made sense to go ahead and do the cardio conversion. So kind of an interesting little twist that was kind of unplanned. What's happening in the background here in digital health is paralleling in medicine and life sciences, paralleling what's happening in the rest of the world, which is we're on our way to hit about 50 billion connected devices by 2020. And that's cars, refrigerators, phones, tablets, and sprinklers, and the list goes on and on and on. Light bulbs and lists. So anything that you can imagine potentially can be connected wirelessly, put on the net, be cloud managed, have interconnectivity to a variety of apps, and medicine not immune from that. So we'll talk more about that in medicine, but this is just following a trend that's with a great deal of scale to it, and it's driven by the fact that we have a great deal of data that can be collected on and around the body, obviously. I just want to spend a few moments just talking about what's kind of driving this in the U.S. We have 6,000 digital health companies currently today in the U.S. There's another 600 of them in Finland alone, which has the highest density per population in the world. But 6,000 companies raising billions of dollars, more than the biotech industry currently raises. And obviously it's driving a lot of participation from a lot of traditional active players in both the strategic world as well as the venture world. We have a lot of venture capital companies that have entire portfolios now of multiple investments in the digital health space, and we're seeing a lot of investments made by strategic investors, folks like Qualcomm and Google, and pharma companies and healthcare provider entities like Ascension Health, to name some. So lots of players in this space. In fact, the rate at which the strategics have gotten into this space has surprised the traditional venture capital, and in fact, they often feel like they get squeezed out of the deals by the strategics who are getting into them before they are, in some cases. And then we're actually starting to see some exits, some IPO work, some sales, some mergers, and so we're starting to see this actually become a cornerstone part of the investment infrastructure, and with some scale and size to it. Amongst the Fortune 50 companies, not 500, but 50, 3 years ago, we had 14 companies that had a healthcare offering of some kind. Today, it's 38. So we're starting to see large companies start to think about how they can capture some portion of $1 out of $5 that are spent in America, and perhaps less than that around the world, but that are spent on healthcare. And so it's attracting the large companies in for all kinds of reasons, and they're moving in fairly rapidly. And of course, probably the most visible one has been Google. But even companies like Avery Dennison, which you're probably more familiar with when you go to Staples and buy labels for your file folders or envelopes, They have a medical patch that is used to peel and stick and measure a variety of physiological parameters. And so here's an example of a company that's good at glue that got into the digital medicine space. So the drivers that are out here are all about shifting costs and helping to drive to lower cost structures. It would not be a good time to get into the medical device market from my perspective if you were in the traditional kind of build the big box market. I think many of the offerings that are going to come out are going to be in the very low cost disposable space for things that we traditionally monitored or gathered information on using a more expensive box that sat on a shelf at a doctor's office or at a hospital. And a lot of the solutions obviously are focused on what happens in the hand of a consumer and use the phone as part of either as a hub for transmitting data, as an app manager for interacting with sensors and information, and takes advantage of the fact that obviously these are in our lives. And a couple of funny little factoids. We have significantly more phones in the world active on the network than we have underwear users. We passed the number of toothbrush users about 8 years ago. So this is quite possibly the most prominent device of any kind across the entire global population in the world. One of the earlier devices that got me convinced that digital health had a future was a LiveCore device, which for $79 converts your smartphone into a single lead electrocardiogram for recording, for diagnosing, and for sharing. This is commercially available and FDA approved. I happen to have access to one 7 years ago before it was FDA approved, and gave it to my son, who was a victim of tachycardia as a result of some complex congenital heart defects. And the instructions I gave him at the time, which were very incomplete because I hadn't even read the instructions that came with the device, was to take it, record his ECG if he felt funny, and save it in case his doctor could take advantage of it. Approximately a month later, he was in the mountains on Montana, and I got a call from my brother and sister-in-law who were driving him to the hospital. He was in a tachycardia pattern. Asked to talk to him. I asked how he was. He said, "I'm fine, Dad." I said, "What's your heart rate?" He said, "It's 214. And before I could say anything else, he said, "But don't worry, I've got everything taken care of." And I asked him, "What does that mean?" And he said, "Well, we've called the hospital. We got one of the nurses' email addresses. We've sent her my medical history, which was on the phone. We've sent the ECG pattern. We looked up on Google, found out we're 35 minutes out. So I told them to have my adenosine IV ready when we arrive." I was a 15-year-old kid that figured out all that. Nothing Mom and Dad did told them to plan all that, let alone remember the drug that corrects the tachycardia and ask for it. So when that happened, and later the next day when I and the chief of cardiology at USC called and spoke to that ER doc, who said in his 35 years he'd never had a patient before they arrive present their history, the diagnosis, the evidence, and demand the therapy, and actually ask for the right therapy, and demand when and where they would receive it. That's when I knew we had a powerful set of new consumer-aided tools by digitizing medical data acquisition and medical sharing of that information, and doing it in such a way where the consumers can manage it themselves. That whole experience led me to help develop the Qualcomm Tricorder Xprize, which was a contest to develop devices that could be used in the hands of consumers to make diagnosis. So you can think of that a LiveCore device as an early example. The Tricorder Xprize will be awarded in the first quarter of 2017. We're down to the finalists. There's 7 companies that are competing out of an original 134 from around the world for $10 million in prize money that was put up for this. And Qualcomm envisions that there'll be hundreds of different kinds of tricorders that'll be diagnostic in nature, or therapy management in nature, or laboratory in nature, and they want to get that space kind of catalyzed in the marketplace, and it has happened. And now we see all kinds of things that you might describe as tricorders. This is the Scan-A-Do device. We have that in a clinical trial today. It's a $199 device meant to provide all these vital signs, including blood pressure, merely by holding it up to your temporal forehead for 30 seconds. And they've also got a laboratory piece coming out, so you can actually pee on part of their device. so you can actually get laboratory results on your phone as part of this system. This is just one of many that are coming out. There's a number of interesting laboratory devices for home-based laboratories, and I think we'll see this this decade, before the decade's out. Maybe it won't be common, but you'll see the availability of any number of home-based laboratory tests at a very inexpensive razor blade kind of model. This is a device that we teamed up with at Qualcomm, with a company out of Los Angeles, that uses pressure sensors for home-based breast exams. We designed the device on the left, taking a much cruder device and turned it into a device that could, but is not yet, sold for less than $500. It's got a cell phone chip in it, it's waterproof, and is meant to be used by a woman in the bathroom or in the shower. Current system, which is FDA approved, is actually used by physicians, mostly sold outside of the United States today, this pressure sense. But when we worked with the company, we wanted to design a prototype that actually could be consumerized. And this just represents the kind of devices that have made it all the way through FDA. The technology's good. It's on par with mammograms. It's high. It has no radiology in it. It's all high pressure, incredible pressure sensing. It does really interesting mapping, and this represents a device that would fit in the palm of your hand that you could use in the comfort of your own home. This is another such device that's kind of an upgrade to Mom's mercury thermometer. It's a device that not only can you look in the ear, nose, mouth, capture stills and video and share those. You can get heart sounds and lung sounds and also share those. You can get temperature, heart rate, respiratory rate, SpO2, blood pressure, all in a handheld device that's coming to us from a company out of Israel, meant to sell for approximately $200 and be a meaningful upgrade to that mercury thermometer in the medicine cabinet. And just as a little funny little video, the concept of digital health is reaching the mainstream audience. This is from Silicon Valley, the HBO special. I'll just share a quick video.
Would you be interested in a device that links to your smartphone and lets you know even before it happens whether you're having a panic attack or a heart attack? Yeah. Okay, here's how Panic Attack works. You wear this on your finger all day and it tracks your vitals. Or, if that's too embarrassing, there's also a Bluetooth suppository, and that goes right where you think it goes. And that comes with a retrieval kit.
So this Internet of Medical Things is what I refer to, and a number of folks refer to, as we start thinking about the digitization and the transformation using digital technologies of the processes, the workflows, and the devices that we're familiar with historically in the medical and life science profession. And you're going to see shortly here a number of examples specifically out of pharma. But the question I would raise first is, so why is this happening? And specifically, why is it happening in pharma? Why does pharma want to digitize the drug? Why is there a beyond the pill kind of movement? Why does it make sense to get data while you're asking somebody to take their medications? And I think the series here explains it. The industry needs to have data to be able to know whether a particular medication is appropriate for a specific individual. This is all going towards the direction in which buyers are moving. In other words, they're saying, we don't really want population biology-based solutions anymore. We want to know whether this drug is actually going to be relevant to a specific individual. And we need to know data to show and capture the outcome for that individual. Again, from a payment perspective, be able to prove that we actually did something that was of value for that individual. And we're going to need that data to be able to contract in risk-bearing contracts from the buyer. So these three orders or rationale actually came from Chris Viehbacher, who was CEO of Sanofi until last year, as the rationale that Sanofi put in place for digitalization. And I think they apply to pretty much just about every company. We're moving into a marketplace where people are asking for value. They want to know if things actually work. They're going to end up paying more if they actually get the benefit. But the buyer is going to say, I don't want to pay if I'm not getting the benefit. And that's the big transaction that we're in the transformation that we're in the middle of right now, at the very early stages of for pharma. But there is one more reason that pharma is very, very interested in digitizing the drugs or the packaging, whether that's the vials, the blister packs, or any other, the injectors, the inhalers, etc. And that's because you can actually end up selling more product. And you can sell more product by basically two methodologies. One is, if you can help people keep track of taking their meds, you potentially can keep them on track to consume more meds. And if they consume more meds, they have to buy more meds. So if you can imagine somebody who averages 27 pills a month instead of the 30 that's recommended, but you, through digital tools, get them up to the 30, that's a 10% bump, actually slightly more than 10% bump in the consumption of that product, which leads to more sales. Somewhere down the road, it will lead to potentially relevant information regarding outcomes, but it leads to more sales immediately. Also, we're starting to see some products where you can literally reorder the product, reorder the razor blade right from the product, kind of the way Amazon is introducing simple reordering of products into our lives. So the drug companies and some medical device companies that work on a razor blade model are adding technology so you can basically say, I want some more, by hitting a button and then getting more. Again, making it easier to buy and therefore easier to sell and therefore driving sales. So I'm going to run through a number of examples that come from the drug industry that are currently digital models. Pear happens to be one working on digital therapeutics, where they're either digitizing the therapeutic, the drug, or actually developing therapies that are purely software. We have our first software-based therapies that are reimbursed and FDA approved in the United States. And we have at least one in the diabetes field that actually in clinical trials outperformed metformin, the drug, by just getting people to follow a regimen on a piece of software. So interesting as you start thinking about drug companies potentially becoming software companies, selling software as a drug where software may actually be prescribed. So there are different approaches to software. Sometimes it's used as a companion to a drug. Sometimes it is the drug. And other times it'll be part of the way the drug or therapy is managed. Johnson & Johnson has an approach that is designed to be much more of a platform approach where individuals can combine their own wellness data together with their drug and medication data and share that back and forth with their healthcare professionals, including introducing other physiological data like sleep and activity and fitness data on that platform. So it's really a mix or a blend between the consumer wellness space, the fitness space, and the traditional medical space. That happens to be kind of the nexus of one of their big efforts. Novartis has multiple efforts, range with partnerships with Google and Qualcomm, big tech companies. And you'll see this more and more as the pharma companies partner to gain expertise that's outside of their normal expertise, particularly in software and hardware. Pfizer happens to have a strategy particularly well developed on apps and companion apps that go along with drugs. GSK has a very broad strategy that touches on inhalers, on implants, on neurostimulators as a drug. Neurostimulators to cause the body to generate its own drugs, but used as a therapy, and then a lot of work in and around smart patches and smart inhalers. And AstraZeneca is one of probably 6 of the top 10 companies that have smart inhalers on their agenda. So the inhaler space, where you've got connected inhalers that know dose, time, date, location. They combine that information with Google traffic information, with NOAA weather information, with pollen counts, and other forms of weather, is really starting to create a big data, interesting set of examples. There's plenty of examples out in the world. Teva actually acquired a startup company so they could get into the connected inhaler space, a company called Gecko. And Amgen's been very aggressive in developing connected injectors, so that the drug itself is being delivered by a device that's actually connected and is essentially a cloud-managed drug delivery system. So this is all leading to a concept where the life science products may get integrated into our lives, but they may also be integrated as part of a system. And here's an example. These are all examples of connected, wireless insulin delivery systems. So this is just one drug area that's now in a smart package that can share information about time, date, and dose, and become part of a much larger system, such as a blood glucose meter, like the Yofi meter here, which is an all-in-one meter, can be used in one hand, can test and get your results in 10 seconds or less. It has the lancets and the strips in the device, and it communicates with connected insulin pens as well as connected insulin pumps, and begins to show what you can do when you start thinking about building a system, which is very much a telecom concept. And this is Dexcom's approach. Dexcom is one of the most aggressive open API. It's a managed open API network, but an open API network for building a solution that you can build yourself, where you can take the Dexcom continuous glucose sensor and build it to report to a reader, which can be your smartphone, can also be your Apple Watch. But you can also download different pieces of software that have been approved by the FDA to manage your disease in conjunction with the information from these systems. So now you've got the consumer and or the healthcare professional assembling a solution that has sensors, displays, algorithms, and software that were actually never submitted in their totality together to the FDA, but got approved individually. And now, like a Lego set or an erector set, you build your own solution. We're seeing Dexcom also works with Tandem on their pump, so the pump can actually be part of that system that you build together. And this is a pump that was actually one of the first artificial pancreases that went into a fairly good-sized trial. We now have Medtronic's with an approved artificial pancreas. But this one just shows the simplicity of taking an Apple phone, an iPhone, a Tandem pump, and a Dexcom glucose monitor, and actually building an artificial pancreas using off-the-shelf components and then custom software. And this actually got phenomenally good results. It's not a product that in and of itself, it was more of a research project, but it just shows how far you can go taking off-the-shelf components, putting them together into an integrated solution and moving it forward. In the inhaler space, Propeller Health was perhaps the leader. They really led the effort to combine NOAA weather information along with traffic information together with the drug and dosing information to begin to actually gain a lot of insights. Their insights have driven now, like I said, about 6 different companies now to move into the connected inhaler space with projects all over. Philips has a new ultrasound unit that's meant to go in your pocket, meant to be inexpensive. And in fact, you can't even buy it. You can only lease it or rent it. It uses cloud-based data storage and has sharing capabilities. And you can not only share between healthcare providers, you can share images back to the patient themselves. And so a different way of thinking about devices in the future. There's at least 6 handheld devices currently either on the market or on their way to the market. And there are new devices and new software currently being developed in the ultrasound space that would ultimately allow a non-ultrasound technician or frankly even a patient to do their own ultrasounds, validate the acquisition of the image, and do the interpretation. So we're moving very, very rapidly with goals to actually automate much of the complex elements of medical imaging. And then we know a lot about what Apple is doing. They started with Health Kit and Research Kit, and then more recently with Care Kit for building therapy managements. They're interacting with Cerner and Epic and Allscripts and others to share data into your healthcare record. I believe this is just the beginning of their plan. I think Apple will suck information out of the record systems and essentially be the first company to mobilize your health medical record to your phone in a way that is in a format that's shareable by you to not only healthcare providers, but to apps. And what Apple will end up doing is allowing their app developers to build apps that add value that you can electively decide to share your information to in order to get a value proposition. You can think of something very simple like, please look at all my medications and tell me where to get my medications and less expensively. But you can imagine much more complex forms of advice and information and analytics being turned on to your information when you have the ability through one click of a button to share your information with an app that you believe has true value. So what's really happening here? Well, I think the key element here is the consumerism of healthcare is being driven by convenience. And convenience is what's causing people to say and develop new solutions that will stick with people, with consumers, but solve a healthcare problem. And certainly one of the big examples is all the companies working in designing hubs that can be used as medical hubs for gathering information from devices, from smart patches, from smart apparel, and getting that information routed to the appropriate cloud servers, to the appropriate cloud software, and to the appropriate people. And these are just some of the folks that are moved in. Qualcomm's probably was an early lead here, but when you actually see and understand what Amazon and Google are doing, you'll understand that they're moving very, very rapidly into the same spaces. They're going to do much more in terms of home automation, but they'll definitely participate in the healthcare information as well. And then combining all that data gathering capabilities with actual healthcare professionals in a way that's highly convenient, we'll see telemedicine, whether it's voice telemedicine or email telemedicine or video telemedicine or my recent favorite, text telemedicine. It doesn't really matter. Text is particularly interesting because being an asynchronous methodology, it's particularly good at two things. One is increasing the leverage of the practitioners. The average practitioner currently doing text telemedicine, and it does exist as a commercial offering, can do about 3.5 times the volume of somebody doing voice or video teleconferencing. So it's a very interesting technology, and it has to do with because it's asynchronous, and the companies doing text-based telemedicine can actually resolve about 85% of their visits just purely on text. So what else is happening in this space that goes together with the life science industry? And the big area is wearables. But what's happening now is the wearable industry is moving from the early companies like Fitbit that got out ahead with simple designs and moving into an industry that's becoming increasingly impacted by fashion. And so brands are getting involved. This is Tory Burch's activity monitor. But whether it's an activity monitor or an actual physiological monitor with medical pieces, you're going to see more and more brands involved that bring design elements in and don't disclose a medical condition as a result of you wearing the particular device. And so you're seeing many, many examples. And one of the areas I work heavily in is in the smart apparel space. And what you're going to see in the apparel space is going to be somewhat revolutionary. We're at the point now where the electronics can easily be managed, the garments can easily be washable repeatedly, and rechargeability and user experience is actually quite good, and the price points can be in the $150 to $200 range, at least at this point in time. So any data sensors that normally can be worn against the body in the form of a patch or another wearable can probably also be done in the form of clothing. And you're going to see a lot of really interesting opportunities to interact with your clothing. You'll see clothing, for example, in yoga that'll actually help you finish the move, tell you how to actually make the yoga move completely by giving you haptic feedback across your body is just one example. You'll certainly see things like heart rate and ECG blended into fabrics. You'll see blood pressure. Most every vital sign you can imagine is either already in clothing or almost in clothing. You'll see clothing that'll massage you, and the list goes on and on. The massaging material is really interesting when you look at edema and some of the equipment that's currently used for managing edema in patients that's not attractive, is expensive, is heavy, and now we have some opportunities to actually reduce it to something that actually is attractive, feels nice, and you wouldn't mind wearing it, to work, for example. This is one of the companies that makes a lot of the smart clothing that's in the fitness and health space. The one on the bottom right is interesting. That's heart rate and SpO2 for newborns in the form of a little booty that can be put on in the hospital. That can go home with mom. Mom now has a peace of mind product for monitoring the kid in a very, very simple package at a very inexpensive rate. That's from a company called Owlet. It's currently commercially available, FDA approved. So just a very simple example in the peace of mind arena. And so these combinations of sensors and software raise a really interesting question, and that is, in the future, will doctors prescribe the app, or will the apps prescribe the doctor? And I plant that seed because we're going to move to a world where more and more of the interaction with the healthcare personnel may be done because you're interacting with a device or devices or sensors, and that you get indication that you should now see a healthcare professional rather than the other way around. One of the areas that I'm very fascinated by, and this gets into something that's very scary for a lot of folks, is the actual virtualization of real people, giving them, through artificial intelligence and machine learning, the ability to have interacting conversational exchanges. And this allows the potential for one person to be leveraged across thousands of people. It allows us to take the celebrity healthcare professionals and make them available to anybody. And so USC happens to be leading this. They actually have an effort to build an entire virtual medical clinic. And when we mean a virtual medical clinic, we don't really mean the telemedicine version. What we really mean is where the healthcare professionals themselves are virtualized. So I'll show you a couple of options here.
Meet Bill. Bill has been diagnosed with atrial fibrillation. His cardiologist, Dr. Saxon, has given Bill a number of treatment recommendations. After leaving the office, Bill decides that he would like to review safety and efficacy evidence for some of the treatment options. Dr. Saxon hooks him up with her own virtual doctor.
Hi, Bill. It's Dr. Saxon. Well, not the real me, but the virtual me. I know you had some additional questions about your diagnosis of atrial fibrillation. Which treatments are you most interested in? What outcomes are you most worried about?
The virtual doctor scours the evidence database for relevant studies.
For the outcome of mortality, we found 4 studies with over 47,000 patients who have a similar patient profile as you. The data shows there was less than 1% fewer deaths in the group that took the new oral anticoagulants compared to the group that took Coumadin, which means that the new oral anticoagulants reduced mortality by 9% compared to Coumadin. We would have to treat approximately 140 people over 2 years to save one life. My recommendation, based on this data, is that you switch from Coumadin to a new oral anticoagulant because you have a mortality benefit and a reduced risk of the major target of these drugs, that is stroke. Bill, thanks for contacting me. Let's talk again soon. Don't hesitate to check in if you have any questions at all.
So, David, this is the man that I've flown across the country to meet.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there anything that I can't ask him?
Why don't you ask him that?
Is there any question you can't answer?
I have no comment about rap music.
Neither do I. It's amazing. It's almost haunting that he is looking directly into my eyes.
Yeah, this new technology and the person himself will come through as you'll experience.
I quickly forget that I'm talking to a recording of Pincus, and I'm drawn into his stories about the family he lost and his twin sister with the golden hair. Is there one thing that stays with you more than anything else about the Holocaust?
I mean, the thing that pains me more than anything else, I can't remember anything about my sister. Before the war, during the war, what she looked like, there's just one thing left. That's the braid.
Pincus, do you have any regrets?
I regret my family, my surroundings, my life.
His ability to answer my questions is incredibly powerful, but it's only half the story. I soon meet Pincus again, this time with an added dimension. I want to reach out and shake his hand.
That technology is particularly powerful, and what I don't have the ability to show you is what the U.S. Army has already done for psychological counseling, where they've actually commercialized 10 hours, up to 10 hours of one-on-one psychological counseling with virtual counselors, which are based on real people. So that's a piece, obviously, that was done for the Today Show, and that Pincus is available at the Holocaust Museum, so you can go have a conversation with him. But that's an example of how you could virtualize somebody and use them in, say, genomic counseling, diabetes education, etc., and leverage perhaps even celebrities or celebrity doctors or celebrity nurses as the individual that they can reach thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. Another big key element behind a lot of this is a movement to make the data that's available from devices directly available to the patients. There's government policy movements here, and there's a great deal of interest in making that available. That is essentially what Apple is doing and working on, and I think Apple is going to basically possibly hold the lead here and actually set the example for the rest of the world, essentially arming the consumer with their own information and then giving them opportunities to interact with that information, and not only with healthcare providers but also with developers that create those apps. So this concept that your information is your information and it's free to you and you have the right to look at it, share it, use it, is rapidly coming upon us. And there's a huge value proposition to that. There's people perceive that there's value out of getting access to information, and there's real economic value being estimated is available when consumers actually have access to open data. So I think you watch this as a term. This one's scary for the pharmaceutical industry, but certainly something that appears to be kind of well underway. So the overarching message here is can digitalization and transformation, help us manage costs, help us manage our own care and conditions, and at the same time make things more efficient, more convenient, and be delivered at lower cost.
Miss Kelly, the doctor will see you now. Can you let the doctor know that I'll be with him shortly? Huh? I'm getting a lot of work done. Your Wi-Fi is very fast. But he's ready for you now. I'll be with him as soon as I can.
Is she ready?
Not yet, but you're next.
So consumers are having a big push on this. Whether consumers themselves will actually help drive costs down, that's unclear. Certainly, they're driving more choice in the marketplace, and potentially a more empowered consumer here using any of the tools we've described here will be a consumer that's more engaged in their healthcare. At least that's the goal. And certainly, there's an awful lot of money and an awful lot of efforts and an awful lot of people involved in trying to reach that goal. If you'd like more information in this space, I highly recommend my colleague's book, Zurich Topol's bestseller, The Patient Will See You Now. It really capitalizes on genomics, digital medicine, and consumerism, and paints a picture and gives the rationale as to why this will be the core of future healthcare delivery and medical practice. It's well researched. It's really a nice textbook, so I can't endorse it more. I don't make anything off of it. I just think it's a wonderful asset. So I appreciate the opportunity to address you all, and I know we've got a few extra minutes here, so I'll stop sharing the screen and we'll go to questions if you'd like to ask any questions.
Sounds great, John. We were only able to see half of the slides in many cases. I don't know why. I think we might have two monitors or something. So would it be possible to get the slides after the fact to share with just the 11 that have signed up today?
Yes, I'd be happy to share a deck with you. I'm sorry about that. I don't know why that would have occurred.
Okay, no worries. Does anyone else have any questions for Don?
Hi, Krista. It's Suzanne. I'll ask a question.
Great, thanks.
Don, can you comment about reimbursement? A lot of the technologies you've shown are currently consumer-driven or pharma-driven, but can you talk about the reimbursement environment for some of the new technologies that are coming online and what the response has been?
Yeah, if we separate out things that are digitized devices and measurements that are already well institutionalized, then frankly they're falling under existing codes and it's pretty straightforward. If we're looking at getting new codes, there's a long haul in front of you. But most of the companies, I think, are actually basically using technology to develop either new services that are meant to be part of the healthcare delivery service, or they're meant to manage the cost of the existing services down so that under bundled payment, you can be more efficient. Sometimes they're being used to gather patients. So I'm working with one large hospital that has a hospital organization that has multiple maternity, large women's health hospitals, and they're looking at very aggressively looking at taking on the Owlet product around a marketing campaign. Basically, come have your baby with us and go home with something special. So essentially, think of the healthcare industry actually using the digital component as part of their their marketing campaign by providing a peace of mind element of their service. So the short answer is there is no one answer. There's lots of payment schemes. There's consumer pay. There's bundled pay. And really what ends up happening is you sit down and go, what are we trying to accomplish within our model, and how can we best get there? In the pharma's case, I think the most common model right now is can we build in a feature that will increase adherence and thereby increase consumption, which will increase sales. And that will then take care of all of the other rationale, which is more clinically oriented or outcomes oriented.
Got it. So we have a question from Heather Petty, who's in, I believe, the Boston area. Hi, Don. Thank you so much for the excellent presentation. How do you think pharma can integrate digital health into their clinical trials program? For digital health to be valuable in a clinical trial setting, do you think the device needs to produce clinical grade data as determined by FDA or CE mark approvals? Or do you think items such as Fitbit can provide valuable information in clinical trial programs that help drugs get approved?
So the answer is all of the above. I'm actually the PI. I don't know. I'm not normally a PI, but I'm the PI on a trial using a off-the-shelf consumer device as part of an orthopedic procedure to add metrics to it. And I can tell you that there happens to be an improved drug involved, and it's already an adopted procedure. But the metrics are adding a tremendous amount of value. And interestingly, the patients are responding very positively, so much so that mid-trial, the docs in the trial came to the drug company and said, would you mind if we started buying these devices for all of our patients, including the ones not in a trial? And the reason was because the patients were responding so positively and they were getting new referrals that they saw that this was a very rational thing to do. It was providing metrics that previously did not exist because it was all observational data that the physicians historically worked off of. So the answer for trials, I'll answer it this way. The better, faster, cheaper trials, especially for phase 3, are going to be slow in coming, and that has to do with risk and conversations that have yet to be had at any significant level with the FDA about what's going to be acceptable in terms of devices. I am very much aware, though, of some conversations where the FDA is effectively changing what is considered medical grade for purposes of phase 3 trials. But it requires the company to sit down and have a very direct, honest, and forthright conversation with the FDA. It also requires the company to get comfortable often to collect data they previously either did not collect and are therefore fearful of what it might show, and or collect data which is not necessarily part of their protocol. This happens a lot of times, for example, when you're using a smart patch that might measure 8 or 10 different physiological parameters, and your protocol only requires 1 or 2. So there's a whole lot of complexity there. But here's the reality. What's happening in actual connected drugs, meaning the commercial brand side of the things, and I just gave you a whole bunch of examples, is actually coming to the market faster than the adoption of the clinical trials. So the companies, the pharma companies, are going to have to learn and are learning how to test their connected devices that are used in conjunction with branded drugs. But in many cases, long before they learn how to use connected devices in phase 3 trials on new drugs. So, and in the reality, there'll be more activity around trials around brand drugs and what I call smart pharmaceutical packaging. And that'll come into the market faster than actual using the devices in the clinical trial space. But that being said, I've been involved in many pharma trials that are using consumer devices, using telemedicine, not requiring patients to go to the PI site. All the rules that you can imagine that historically have been thought of are the rules you can't violate. I'm seeing them violated with FDA approval and with careful design involved in the trial.
Looks like Heather replied. Let me just pull that up. Thank you for the insightful answer. Okay. Anyone else have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is William. I'm very interested in the software treatment for diabetes, the trial that they had. Was there any data on user, compliance with using that software? I mean, I totally get how there would be a lot of great uptake in sustainability when a platform is making, say, compliance easier. But when you're actually asking a user or patient to do something extra, do we have any data on whether they're able to keep up with that?
Yeah, look up, the company is WellDoc. The product is Blue Star. And it is reimbursable software. So this is prescribed reimbursable software without a drug that is paid for by a number of insurers today. And if you look up the trials around the Blue Star product by WellDoc, you'll find what you're asking for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions for Don? This has been really fascinating from someone who's not necessarily in the industry, but supporting a whole bunch of you that are. The whole, personal consumer space is something I think everyone can sort of understand.
What makes it complicated, I'll just make a comment. What makes it so complicated is you're taking elements of consumerism and elements of telecommunications and digital technologies and blending them in with very traditional industries of medical device and pharmaceuticals. And there's a collision that goes on there. But at the same time, that collision is impacted by the economic reality that we can't afford to do what we've been doing. And so those things are all colliding to create this interesting set of opportunities for new companies, new services, and new smart packaging around drugs. And then finally, on top of that, is this realization that perhaps we can actually get the kind of adherence we thought we could get in the trials, but maybe doesn't happen in real life, and we can understand more about that patient. It's going to lead to a concept that I'll introduce that I call the trial never ends, meaning that if you use digital products in the trial and it's meant to be part of the final product, meaning, let's say, for example, in a very simple example, you have a blood pressure measurement patch that is combined with blood pressure medication, and you're meant to use the patch periodically or permanently in conjunction with the meds, you can imagine a number of things happening. One is patients will learn to self-titrate their drug, much like what happens in diabetes, because they'll have the results. They won't need to go see the doctor. They'll see what happens when they take one less or one more, or et cetera. That'll just be a natural evolution. Whether that was part of the original trial or not will be irrelevant. That will just be what happens. So you'll see a concept where the FDA will ultimately say the data gathered in the trial needs to be continued to be gathered after commercial release, and effectively the connected product will be the product that's part of a clinical trial that never ends. It's just you transition between trial to real world life and real world data exchange.
Interesting. All right, one more question. Anyone have a burning question? Okay, well, I'm going to say thank you, Don, for your time and for your insights. It was really super interesting, and I hope you come again and speak to our students and inspire them with all the interesting changes that are happening.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for everybody. I'm glad you had a chance, and the school knows how to get hold of me.
All right. Thanks, Don. Thanks, everyone, for coming.
Bye.
See you next time. Bye-bye.